You asked about past lives, and I'd like to talk about that subject. I believe that human beings have an opportunity to live more than one life as a human being on earth. This allows for our souls to learn, to progress, even though our spiritual home is a heavenly one. Karma is just what we do, comes back to us. And that could be if we're a wonderful friend, we meet friends who are wonderful to us. What happens if somebody has a very difficult life? Does that mean that they were a less kind soul than others? My teacher, Jessica Madigan, who researched Edgar Cayce's work, said no, not necessarily. It might mean they're very advanced. And they decided to work out all their karma in this life. So they've taken on a physical problem and relationship problems and all kinds of things. Or they have a loved one with a physical problem, and they could have all kinds, even loss. Why? When you find yourself asking, why me? Why did this happen? It's probably karma. Karma is simply cause and effect. The Bible says you cast your bread on the water and it returns to you. There was a woman that Edgar Cayce, America's most famous, well-researched seer or prophet, very much a Christian, who surprised himself by, in his sleep state reading, saying that we do live again. And he said that he found a woman whose hands were absolutely beautiful. They were on the Palmolive billboards. And he said that in another life, she used her hands to tend orphan children when she was a nun, something like that. So that's karma coming back to you. It's not all negative. If you want to know where you've lived before, you ask yourself, what kinds of costumes, decorations, art do I really like? Have I watched a movie where I was riveted and I wanted to be there? I must have happy memories of King Arthur's court. That seems happy to me. But I don't want to go back to a harem ever again. So we have things that we feel emotionally, and that tells us where our lives are. And we may get along very well with people of a certain race or culture and not as well with others, again, that talk about the lives we've experienced. If you're in a rut or a negative cycle, Marcia Hunter once said, a younger teacher, she said, but older than me at the time, she said you can change your cycle. Let's say everything's going wrong and you've been wearing heavy kind of Egyptian eyeliner and you've been wearing a more Egyptian type of clothes. You can get out of Egypt and go into a different cycle by changing the things that you're wearing, how your apartment looks, or so forth, or your home. So we can actually change our cycle. But I agree with Edgar Cayce. I'm a mystical Christian at heart who respects a lot of wonderful traditions, including earth-based traditions, including the Bhakti traditions of Hinduism, including Jewish humanitarianism, and so many more. But I am a mystical Christian at heart, and I believe that if you're compassionate and kind to others and forgiving yourself, that your worst situations can change. And the very thing that was yucky changes to something really good because you are bringing that Christ force out within you, and you can change karma and change your destiny. And even the early Christians, one of the many teachings of Christianity that they were deciding on involved living more than once, up until about the 5th century when you said she's been born again. They meant it literally. She came back. And Edgar Cayce, when he did a reading, he was very Bible-based for someone to help with their health. He was asleep during it, and when he found out that he had mentioned reincarnation, what he did was he woke up and he reread the Bible, every single word, to make sure the Bible didn't say it was wrong. And it didn't. And in fact, there were a couple of examples of people that seem to have come back. I think it was Herod's wife and Jezebel and John the Baptist and an earlier figure. I had a graduate fellow student, Larry Van Hoos, who wrote a book called The Bible and Reincarnation. So yes, I do believe I've lived before. I've rested in heavenly realms And it helps me when I take care of my disabled daughter to realize I think she was my mother in the very last life that I dreamed about. I think she was a Christian Scientist. I was an actress. She didn't right away look for help for my health, and she was very loving otherwise. And we are going through an experience together having to do with karma. I also dreamed of living long ago and researched in the library a young woman I had never heard about, but my dream led me to her. Her name was Claire Clairmont, and she was the stepsister of a famous writer, Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. And when Mary married a poet, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Claire had her eyes on the romantic figure, Lord Byron, and she wanted so much to be with Lord Byron. So she became pregnant. She was only 17, and she could have raised her baby with her stepsister and her husband, but no, she was willful, and she wanted to send the baby to Byron because he had rejected her, and she was convinced they would be a family again. Lord Byron's mother, he had a clubfoot growing up, and she had ridiculed him. So even though he was the great lover, it was love him and leave him and hurt him in the end. So when she sent the baby and a nurse to him, he trotted the little baby, who was only a year old, around, showed her off, and then dumped her off at a convent where she lived till age 5 but died of typhus. And that was Claire's daughter, and she wanted to see her terribly, and he would never, ever let her see her child again. So in this life, when I had a special daughter, I was young and overwhelmed and still pretty self-centered. It wasn't until I realized that I needed to put her needs first that great joy came into it also. I just saw her this morning, and I'll see her probably again this afternoon. I'm committed to putting her first because I've learned my karmic lesson, and she brings joy when she says to people, "I'm happy," or embraces Miss Piggy with eyes of wonder, even though she's a grown-up child. It's really a good thing. So your karma from your past life can be met, and even though the situation hasn't changed, the blessings came into it because I changed my attitude. And that's what we're really learning from life to life. So have some fun figuring out what kind of cultures do you like? What past time periods fascinate you? And where would you never like to go? The ones you like are usually your happy lives. The ones that you don't want to go to might be karmic. Maybe the girl in the harem in Atlantis was a priestess with all the men in the world at her bidding, and she was controlling them. So sometimes the shoe we wear has been on the other foot. And it helped me so much to realize what I had done in the past when I was well and healthy, and I made these choices. Well, now I can learn the lesson from it and turn it to grace. So past lives to me are a wonderful part of understanding ourselves. People say, why remember? Well, you remember 5th grade and you know where you were born. What if just 12 years or so before you had finished another life? So you bring some of the emotions with you. The opportunities are there, and you can grow from it by knowing who you are and knowing what your wonderful talents are, because they go, if you're an artist, you've been an artist all the way through in one form or another. That's your destiny, and that goes from life to life. Edgar Cayce's reading said, there is a place you can fill that no other soul can fill. There's a unique way that you can bring light in this life. Viktor Frankl, who was in a concentration camp, a Jewish man, experienced degradation, bestiality, horrible beyond bestialities. These were sadistic torture chambers for human beings, stripped of everything. And he realized that deep within himself, there was something no one could take away. And that was his attitude, his choice of attitude. So perhaps he shared a bit of his crust of bread with someone. Perhaps he found ways to give spiritual comfort where he could. He survived through that. And he went on to form a school of psychology called logotherapy. And that's where your way of visualizing, your way of perceiving can make a big difference in how you feel. So coming back to all of it, I do believe in past lives called reincarnation. Re is again. Incarnation is being carnate in the physical body. But I also believe we have a light body that goes with us forever. Yes, there is reincarnation, I do believe, in past lives.